And most important, and I mean most important, we filled our idea of an American community with an ethos and ethic of a fiercely family-oriented people who love their children and make life choices in support of their interests. Right here in Western New York, where East Coast sophistication meets Midwestern charm, there is no place like us, there's no sense of place to match us. Now, that's not Chicago's story. That's certainly not New York City's story. That's not Washington, D.C.'s story. That's your story. That's our story. That's the Western New York story. And it seems to me that anyone who hears that story would say to themselves, my heavens, what a people, what a place. They must be going great guns there. They must have a great economy. I want to be part of that. I want to move there. But as we all know, meeting here on this magnificent spring evening, now that it's stopped hailing, the truth could not be further from that. And as a matter of fact, as temporary stewards of that story, not only our elected officials, but all of us as citizens, we owe that story an obligation to ensure that it continues, that it sustains, and indeed it soars. But by way of beginning now, let's take a quick look at what has happened to that story under our watch, during our lifetime. And we're brothers and sisters here so we can tell the truth. We call it the Greater Buffalo Experience. Greater Buffalo is just a synonym for Erie County. You'll see why we use that in a second. Since 1970, we've lost 238,000 of our brothers and sisters. 238,000. My students did the math. What that means is that every hour and 40 minutes, someone moves out of Western New York. Someone moves out of Erie County. Not because they want to, not because they don't like us, but because there's no opportunity. We've lost 40,000 private sector jobs just since 1990. They've just vanished, and they're not coming back. And at the same time, we've added 7,000 public sector jobs, which any economist will tell you is not a way to create a sustainable economy. Housing stock value, not only in the city of Buffalo, not only in the inner ring suburbs, but throughout this county, housing stock value for the third straight decade is down. All the information you're going to see on this slide, Mr. Supervisor, comes from the United States Federal Census, which I keep next to my bed, again, because I'm a bachelor poster child, not much else is happening there. And I read it. I recommend that you read it. You learn a ton about yourself and why you believe what you believe and who we are. And the other source is the United States Labor Department Bureau of Statistics. Do you know that according to the American Heritage Foundation, the most conservative think tank in Washington, D.C., we here in Erie County pay the 4th highest property taxes in America. 4th highest. Per capita income, as you know, that's just a measure of household income, down for the 3rd straight decade. The only thing that's risen here in Erie County in 30 years is the number of free school lunches that we provide at public schools, which of course is a measure of impoverishment. The Bright Flight, we learned about a year and a half ago that in the history of America, no county has lost more people between the ages of 18 and 34 than Erie County. We've lost 30% of them just since 1990. And you know when they leave, with them they take our future. No Peace Bridge. We talked about doing a Peace Bridge. We created a new Peace Bridge for 14 years. We've talked about doing something on the waterfront for 40 years and nothing happens. I have a theory that we have here in Erie County the greatest intellectual capital in America. Think about all the great ideas you hear about. We talk about it, and nothing happens. Then about 2 years ago, Americans woke up around this nation, and in their local paper, they saw a little Associated Press box that said that the straits of those poor people in Erie County had become so dire that they had to place their destiny in the hands of not one, but 2 outside control boards. Never happened before in the history of this nation. Never. And to this moment, that makes me mad. And it should make you cross and angry as well. And do you know why? Because it was necessary. Because our politicians' refusal to embrace change brought it on ourselves. And by the way, it's not our politicians. You know who's responsible for that? You are, and I am. Then we learned this past year, there was I keep it on my desk, there was a beautiful photograph of a young African-American boy on the front page of the Buffalo News. His eyes were bigger than his head, announcing that the Buffalo, that great story that I tried to summarize here, in my mind, the greatest city in America, has become the 2nd most impoverished city in America. That's not right. That's not just. That's not us. And then if you look closely, and I'm going to ask those of you in Tonawanda, because I live just on the other side of the border in the city of Buffalo. If you look closely, and again, we can tell the truth here tonight, we're just brothers and sisters. We don't look like we used to. We're not as well kept up. We're not as clean. And I believe it's one of the reasons is because this government structure under which you labor so hard to create a life for ourselves is being burdened by a size that we're going to discuss in a moment. I'm a Democrat. I believe in government. I believe in the nobility of what you do. I believe in an activist government assisting an aspirational people. As a result, I was a candidate for the office of mayor of the city of Buffalo about 4 years ago. It was the second summer of 5 straight summers that we didn't have enough money to open beaches. We didn't have enough money to open pools. So if you were a young, impoverished child in the city of Buffalo, most likely a minority, on a hot day and it was hot, you had no place to go. So you know where they swam? They swam up at the Black Rock Channel. You know where that is, where Lake Erie meets the Niagara River. And one day I went and swam there with them. In human waste and pollutants that would make you sick. I was sick for a week. I cried for more, because that's not right, and that's not us, and that's not Western New York. That right there, that's a community in crisis. There can be no debate about that. That's a people in peril. I'll acknowledge, Mr. Supervisor, that it didn't happen overnight. I think everyone would be a little bit more upset about it. It sort of happened in slow motion, but that's a community in crisis.